Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hold
Episode
on.
7.
I can't even believe it's number 7. Is it like lucky 7? Seventh inning stretch.
I love 7. It's an amazing number for like complete and yeah. So I guess we should start with our introduction.
Okay, ready? I'm ready.
Yeah.
Unordinary
Unordinary conversations with Amanda.
And with Carolyn.
Awesome. So it's so nice
We're
to
getting
see
better,
you.
I think.
We are. We're getting in sync. Not NSYNC, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So I know that the last week was episode 6, and I was talking about my trip to Puerto Rico. I know the week before we talked about your trip when you were away and some of our lessons of the week. So definitely, I'm sure we both have some lessons this week that are different. Right?
Yes, absolutely. I know that I actually want to thank you and our audience for letting me share last week. It was extremely, sometimes, you know, I need the therapeutic effects of our show too. And it helps me to be vulnerable and transparent. And hopefully it encourages other people to do the same thing. So again, thank you to you and to our audience.
You're so welcome. Yeah, because we had, so we were on this show, and I had Carolyn on my Traumaplicity talk show last week, and
I'm confusing myself.
That's okay. But Carolyn was, just honest. I have a little Traumaplicity show, which goes with all my focus on trauma and overcoming. And Carolyn was very vulnerable. But yes, because we see each other a couple times a week, and last week was a couple of times just because all that. So no, it's great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it and encourage people to, I don't know, I'll let Amanda at the end give a shout out of how to link to it or whatever the right words are, but I'm really grateful. And it's interesting because this past week, if you're okay, I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll do my next.
So this past week, I was very focused on talking to my dad, who is no longer alive, but wanting to have a conversation with him and thank him. And also through thanking him, I wanted to give some people advice on how to better, not raise their kids, but communicate with their kids. How's that? I am like the least on raising, but anyways. So I wrote a letter, and I'm clearly not going to read the whole thing, but just as an introduction, I'm going to say that he had cerebral palsy and that I acknowledge that growing up with that could not be easy. And he had a big heart, a soft voice, passive confidence, right? But it was there. He was a salesman, which is kind of like opposite day of what you would think for someone who has limitations, because he was also very self-loathing, right? But yet he still picked up the phone and made phone calls and typed on his typewriter because you couldn't really read his writing very well. And I just realized in reflection how proud I am for people who go above and beyond with the tools that they have, right? And those were the tools that he had to do what he did. And now there are so many more tools, and I want to encourage people to look for them. And when your kids, whether they're like young children or grown adults, have questions when you don't know the answer, please seek out the answer. Please explain to your kids what different handicaps are. I'm specifically talking about physical and mental handicaps right now, because kids don't know, and there was a lot of shame processed in not understanding. And it was almost like not apology, it was like just a recognition of maybe some of the things I may have missed out on, and gave just a thank you to him for our last 5 years together, because I feel like we made up a lot of lost time. And I think that everybody should have the opportunity, but you need to explain what's going on. And I guess I wrapped it up. Had he had the opportunities available today, he may have accomplished more. But as far as I'm concerned, he gave me life. And so rock on, Dad, and I'll be proud of you always and forever. I understand now. And I guess to wrap it up, you don't have to wait to be 57 to understand. You can help your young kids and grown-up kids understand today. And that's my
Love it.
lesson of my past week.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. I love your reflections. I think there's a loud, I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that?
Oh,
Okay, good. I always wonder. But I'm glad that you had that reflection and just thinking about your dad, right? And understanding, and also knowing in the era, right? Because a lot of times different things we just didn't talk about, or people didn't really talk about different disabilities as much, right? Like we just really didn't talk about anything that we would seem as imperfection, right? Or things that might not be the majority. And I think today we now are just really talking more about our emotions, or talking about different things. And so I'm glad that you were able to reflect, have that time with your dad, and also write to him and say, now you understand. So but I do think those are good points. Just, really thinking about how can we communicate to our kids. And even kids are always inquisitive. They'll ask questions, right? Or they're wanting to know. And it is so important, because I think as parents, we do have education systems. But for me personally, I don't have kids yet, but I will.
Right.
I think as a parent, I have a huge responsibility as to what I want my kids to know, or like how to know it. And it's important I think it's important. I think the family comes to a lot, but we live and learn. So I'm glad that you had that reflection.
Yeah. And I feel like I was able to like kind of change the family dynamic, right? Because of it, and should be able to share more. And I know we've discussed that plenty of times.
Yeah.
I
love it.
So tell me about your past week.
So I will. And I know, well, I went on vacation, right? And I did share just some interesting things happening right in the midst of everything. I went on this trip because I knew I was called to go. And I went on the trip. Some amazing things happened just with all the different women. I met them all. I only knew one woman, but I didn't see her in person. That was one of my coach clients and her mom, and got to go to their wedding. But on the way back, essentially, before I went on the way back, I went to a ferry over to one of the islands, and my brother called, and here my engine for my car, the oil wasn't working. So that was something, right, that was kind of shaking me at the moment. I was already learning how not to get shaken in all this. And then after that, my flight was canceled, and and I've been transitioning out of my job into the new thing I'm doing, and different than what the world would say. They would say go then, but I knew I was called to do this now. So all of these things are happening, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, but fortunately I was leaving a day earlier. So I was able to get a different flight. And when I went to the airport, I actually had a 9-seater. I was on a 9-seater flight. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going from Puerto Rico to St. Thomas. And it was the most amazing flight I've ever been on. And I remember going up in the air over Puerto Rico and over the Caribbean, the sea, and over to St. Thomas. And it was like such a beautiful flight, and you could see everything. And there was not even any turbulence. And, usually big flights, as you know, sometimes there is. And the pilot was 2 seats ahead of us. It was just an amazing 45 minutes in the air. And I just realized that even in everything, right, if I'm up in the sky, I didn't crash in the sea, that there is so much more to come. And it was an upgrade. I would have been on a different flight, but there was such an upgrade, right? And then when I got home, finally I went, and actually the other flight was amazing too. I had a whole row to myself. It was just like all these fun upgrades that I didn't expect on the way home. And when I got home, I called the, insurance company, just not sure what was going to happen, insurance, and then also my dealership. And they're like, oh, it's your engine is covered. And I was like, really? So I had coverage for my engine, which is amazing during the time I'm in. And so that just was it was so great. Like I was so grateful, because in the midst of everything, and I just was like, one more thing. And I had to learn in this, for me, the new engine was not just for the plane, but the new engine was also for me. It's a new season. It's for me, new higher level thinking and going and living, learning how to live in the midst of everything. Because sometimes I think in life, we learn how to just go like this, right? Every day, ooh, high and low. And that's not how we're called to live, or truly live. And so for me, it's been learning how to truly live, right? Knowing I'm worthy, loved, and valued. I already know that, but learning how to live like this, no matter what happens, whether I have all high of financial or not, right? Because finances or other stuff would really throw me, right? And learning how to just be and live no matter what's happening, and have that every day. And I think for me, that's changed me, because that's exactly it. I certainly am still coming out of that, but learning how to truly live abundantly, even if you don't have you know, even if everything else around me is not necessarily where I think it would be, how am I responding? And I think that's where I've changed and grown. And I continue to grow, because how you respond is everything. So I think for me this week has really been a lot of responding and learning how to be in a flow of peace, which I carry, and not let that shift no matter what it looks like. So that's just been a strengthening for me.
That's awesome. And I think like the key word that sticks out in my head is abundance. And it comes in so many different forms, right? So if you're paying attention, you pay attention, and what you shared is just like a 360-degree, which is impossible to do of yourself, but it's almost like you did it, of how abundance is moving you forward, right? It has you in this pattern of going forward. And I'm like, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And there's my dog. There's the unordinary loud dog.
I know. We should just make him part of our show, because he likes to make guest appearance a lot, which, you know, is okay. So no, but so those are our lessons. So again, yours was reflecting just even on relationships, right? And mine was like a lot of relationship with me, and just learning how to go through, because in life we don't know, right? We can be having a lot of great things happen, but things can be really hard, and it is like processing that. And I always process my emotions, but learning how to go through it, and also keeping that hope, but going through the process. And for me, it's always been the process. So now I'm just learning, right? Like, and I've never faced this before, and learning how to face this, I think, and keeping peace and being still is something important, because I've never been this way before. And I'm excited, even though it seems interesting. Like I've never gone this way before. I usually, like I told you, I would get all kinds of plans. And honestly, my plans are like every day, just taking it, like no hustle. That's my personal thing, no hustle, but taking it in rest and ease, and everything creative comes out of rest and ease. So that's where I'm in.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that so much. So are you ready for your question for this week?
I am ready for my question.
Okay. So I am wondering, what experience tipped you to going out on your own and making and starting the journey that you are on? Like, what epiphany did you have? What aha moment did you have? I know you have amazing support, so obviously I'm sure that, you know, played into it, but what was it like? Oh, I think aha moments are so important.
Do you mean just like the jump for me this summer to go? I think there was a couple of different things. I knew last year I was getting ready. I knew there was shifts happening. And so in February 2020 was when I started my website, started learning my business, right? It was called Kingdom Entrepreneurs. It was a 414 challenge right during the pandemic. And that was when I was the person that you would never go to for technology, right? Like I would write the scripts for my friend. We would go out for our teams, my friend, and then one of my colleagues, she would do all the technology quickly. And I quickly learned how to do technology. Like I was learning podcasts and editing and things that I never would have done.
Right.
And I started to learn, you know, all about like the challenge model, you know, one of my mentors like that I'm in, and just learning all about the heart framework and how you truly is about you and your healing, and people really gravitate towards you. So I was learning all these things all year, right? Going boldly out there, just putting myself out there. And I think during it, I started to morph, right? And really by December, when I started coaching, I realized I was passionate. I've always done it. And I started to get more confidence, right? And start to get my niche down. And as I continued to grow, like things in my website started to grow, right? Like everything started to come together, where I got photos for the first time, and I started to have my blogs and started to add things to my market, and learned about coaching packages this year. And when I jumped, right, because I've been with different coaches and they're like, oh, wow, like, you know, I see you doing X, Y, Z. The biggest thing was when I'm doing an internship for counseling. I have my doctorate, but counseling, and it really was the thing. Like I could have done something at night, but it was oh, we want you in a clinical counseling internship twice a week. And so I actually decided, I knew it was time, even though I thought right now things would look different. I knew in obedience and I knew in faith, like to me, it's without seeing, I knew it was time. And I jumped off the boat for the first time in this area and said, I'm launching out. And it was a little scary, just, I mean, I really love my colleagues. I love this. So it was more just really taking the last year and a half and learning. And also I feel like sometimes, yes, like we wait, but sometimes even when you jump and it doesn't seem like the right time, it works out. And so I know, sometimes the world will say, nope, you have to have XYZ. And I get that. But in my case, I felt like this was it. Right. And so it really had, when I did that, it was really out of faith and just knowing that this was a time to do this and to launch, and the mindset is there, that this is going to happen. But it's just been interesting, right? It's just been a lot of deeper work with me saying, okay, like no matter what it looks like, I know this is going to come to fruition. Like I know, just keeping consistent and saying and knowing and believing, right? Like your value. And I think the biggest shift for me in the last 3 or 4 months has been my value, right? That everybody carries gold, but really believing that for myself. Like you carry something no one else has. I carry something no one else can carry, that will bring people value, that will bring people healing, that will release them into their destinies outside of trauma. And so I really took that and said, yeah, I'm passionate. If I don't do it, then how many hundreds or thousands of people aren't going to be served and aren't going to be into their destiny because I said no, because I was too afraid and because I didn't jump, even though it was hard, even though it's, really taking me to the bottom of myself. So that has really been the mindset and the journey so far. And it's a faith journey. It's been humbling. It's taken me to the bottom of myself and continuing to have me really just go deeper. Yeah.
I would imagine that it's when I'll use the word coaching people, or clients, it's your own experience that's critical to being able to say you can do it. Is that true?
It is. And I think because I've gone through it and there's different stages, there's compassion. And the greatest part about it too is, my one client who's really gone through this complex trauma, and I really feel like that was important for me to see where I've been. It's amazing because even today, because we have 2 more sessions, it's been 4 months because I have an intensive one. And oh my gosh, like the first day couldn't get out of bed till today is has her own bakery market, is getting up in the morning, has balance, sleeps at night, doesn't have tremors, doesn't have the trauma tremors, actually feels lighter. Her whole stomach is, then her thyroid is healing. She went from 175 milligrams to 75 milligrams. And we heard she was healed halfway through. And so you see the fruit of it. She's completely different. She's still healing, but there's difference. Like she's living, she's balanced. So I just think when I see that, I see like a life where it was so much stuff going on and she's just like, oh my gosh, night and day. It just excites me.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations. I think that's like that.
I get all passionate, Gazel. I'm like, oh, so excited.
No, but how do you connect with people like that?
How do I connect with?
Like, how did you connect with this person? How did you?
So interestingly enough, like when I started out on this launch, to do this, I knew of her. She had come to one of our, I do, lots of healing prayer, and she came to that, and had different. And so when her, like one of her friends that had taken her in during all this, journey that she's on, I said, well, hey, I know this there's not many people that do what I do, right? Or like deal with dissociative identity disorder and deal with like multiple really complex trauma. And so I was like, well, hey, there's this person that has resources. And then I was brave. I said, if that, or I am starting my own coaching for complex trauma and coursework. So ask her what she's interested in. And don't she wanted to work with me. So we met, and right away she was like, I want to do this with you. And so we developed a relationship from that. So she knew me, she knew of me, she knew my character. And then it was pretty easy that way, as word of mouth. But I ended up saying, hey, I have an option for that. So that was the interesting thing. And now I definitely think that after she's done, I could see us working together in capacities later in the same area. So that's the beautiful thing, is that I've seen her flourish, and I definitely know she's called to the similar thing.
That's amazing. And it's interesting because even, I'm not sure if we're at the time of this, but my quote for the day is from Oprah Winfrey. It's not from me today. And it is, you get in life what you have the courage to ask for.
Mm.
And that is exactly what you did. And it's what you encourage other people to do and work through. And I think that's pretty darn awesome. And of course, we were in sync with everything again, right?
Yes, we were.
Flight.
Well, I didn't get to ask you, and I don't know, I didn't get to ask you your
No, I know. I was
Oh,
racing
yeah.
ahead because I didn't want to lose that momentum of the message.
No, I like that. No, it went with it. It did go with it. Got it. All right. So, how about, I know we talked last week, right? So how about for you with something you've learned this week with processing, or how about like with a mindset shift? Has there anything that you've gone through this week caused you to even go even higher in your mindset or your thinking about a situation?
Yes. So my reply to that would be, I have been working on and actually practiced it today, and maybe for one of the first times, but you got to start somewhere, is allowing other people to take responsibility for what they're supposed to take responsibility for, instead of me doing everything. And I'm not talking about fixing, and I'm talking about simple things like simple errands, and just saying no, and realizing the power of putting the responsibility back into other people's laps. And it empowered me to go, oh my God, I was driving home thinking, oh my God, what's the next thing that I can do, right? To inspire growth. Because I really think that, like, in my situation with my son, I'm only holding, that's who we're talking about for the audience, but like, I'm holding him back from his highest potential by not letting go, I guess, if you could say.
Okay.
And so I started to do that this week, since last Monday, but in particular, something just happened, so I can speak to today. And I'm proud of it, and it felt good. And I need to remember how that felt, because you always want to have good feelings happen again, right? Like when you remember. So thank you.
No, that's awesome. So really in situations, right, being able to have healthy like boundaries or healthy ways to say, this is what you're responsible for, and this might not be, right? And
correct.
Friendships, relationships. So I think that's great. And I know that I got to see part of that last week when we had our talk. And so I think that's important. So
yeah, I also stepped aside last week and got out of everyone's way so that I could have a clearer picture of what was going on. And I think that that's like, I would recommend that for anyone, is, and you can take it to whatever degree that you personally, want to, but sometimes getting out of a situation is the only way to look at it and realize what is the best thing to do. So I stepped out, and then 5 hours later after we spoke, I stepped back in, and it was all the right thing to do. So
that's awesome. Well, good. I'm glad that you in that, right, learned something new about that situation and mindset.
Thank
That's
you.
Great. So I have my quote. It kind of goes with what we were talking about, but when I was in college, undergraduate, I had a class, and one of the books, I think it was for psychology actually, but anyway, the professor had us read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And it was one of my favorite books just because the different stories, even though it wasn't like the context was right, like in the Holocaust, and Viktor Frankl was part of, right, being part of that, and like, prisoner, and saw so much. But one of his quotes that he said, like, when people got tired, when they lost hope, was when they really started to perish, right? Like when we lose hope in such a way, it actually can really really shift our life, right? Because hope is really how we can live. And so one of his quotes was, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, or to choose one's own way. And I think hope is about that. It's about how are we going to have our posture right of our heart or attitude, like what's our mind in that would be horrible, right? I couldn't imagine being at the Holocaust. I don't want to like downplay that, but
Right.
in that, right? Like how did they keep hope? And he was like watching that. And I think that's a tremendously horrific time, right? And so obviously, you know, there's no comparison, right, to that, but like in our circumstances, like how do we keep hope, right, when it seems like there's not hope, and what is our hope? And so I think for me, just in my situation, just going through, and obviously even for yours, it could be part of it is when we have other people, right, that are going through journeys that we're not, or like when other things are going on in our life, how do we keep hope in any circumstance when it seems hopeless, right? Like that's the mystery of it all. And so that quote has always been powerful to me. It's always been one that I've pondered, and I still believe it's true today. I can't imagine living life like I know what it's like to be hopeless. I know what that's like to live in cycles of that, which is not meant for me, right? And that became an identity. And now learning how to live in hope no matter what, right? Whether in prison or whether in like, you know, in a camp, or whether it's something, what am I going to choose about how I see things, and work through the process. So I think that has been pretty on point for me today.
That definitely resonates with me, just for what I've been going through. And it's not giving up, right? And remembering the times when you felt hopeless and what the turnaround was, because I know I have to remind myself, and I think we all have. It's one of the things I think that's really important about journaling is you can go back and go, wait a minute, I did this already. I can do this again, you know, like, and I'm not always talking about going back because I don't always think that's smart, but I think it's a reminder that you did it and you can do it again. And if you haven't done it yet, and today is about hope. And we hope you will continue to learn from us and from our stories and from our unordinary situations.
Yes, our little hope, our little heart, hope,
right?
Yeah. Our little hope in these circumstances. And so hopefully
there we go.
That you gain some type of nugget. And so this has been great, Carolyn, always, you know, learning something new about you and about our week. So it'll be interesting to see how our week goes next week. It'll be week 8, which is incredible. So there's always new adventures. And as always, we want to end. I want to remind you, which I am going to post. I was away last week. It was a little crazy, so I didn't get to post it, but I'm going to have episode 6 and 7 posted. And certainly if you go to our site, which is Unordinary Conversations with Man and Carolyn on LinkedIn, we'll have that there, and really wanting to get that out more, but that is up there. So you can watch all of the episodes from all of the weeks that will be there. So certainly catch it, like it, share it.
And if you're encouraged, we're going to have coming soon. We actually have it all, but we just need to talk about how we're going to share it with our audience. But a journal that you can pre-order. It comes with a pen, and it reflects on what we've talked about so far, but like more of a recap. And it gives you space to do your own writing of your unordinary situations and what you've done with them. And we'd be interested to know, right? So that's coming soon, probably in the next week or so.
Exciting. All right, so here we go with our last little thing. So ready? Unordinary.
Oh my God, we have to start here. Wait, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm doing the do. You always can have a do-over. There's another message, right?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. They'll get to hear it twice. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Unordinary
conversations with Amanda
and with Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great week. All right, let me